Here with Jerry Dawson, 2023 ABCA Hall of Fame inductee, 12 years at Yavapai, and then 37 seasons at Chaparral and 8 state championships. Still the all-time winningest coach in Arizona, and just told me he's helping out Scottsdale this fall. So, Coach Dawson, thanks for jumping on with me.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and my honor to be here.
Yeah, heck yeah. You know, you're still in it. Is it easier to coach pitchers now than it was when you first got into it?
I think as a high school coach, if you're going to have sustainable success, you've got to coach pitchers. So it wasn't necessarily a fact that I looked forward to it or wanted to. It's just something you had to learn how to do. So from there, once I retired at Chaparral, and why the pitching end was the place where they wanted me at Yavapai, so that's where I went. One minor correction, if I could.
Yes.
Only because he may see this. I am Eric Kibler, who is also in this class, is now currently the winningest high school baseball coach. So rather than,
and he was just on with me, and
I
don't even think we talked about that at all, honestly. Just because it pops up the first thing when you Google your name, that's one of the first things that popped up. I don't think that popped up on air. He's gonna have to get his Wikipedia changed.
I'll have I have to be full disclosure, especially when we know each other and have been friends this long.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I don't know if you're aware or not, but our school districts actually border each other.
I did not know that.
Our attendance zones share the same border, and we're 5.9 miles apart. So kind of ironic.
You know, when you first got into it, I mean, who did anybody say, "Hey, you're going to have to make sure pitching's there," or was that something you just came to on your own that we've got to make sure our pitching's right?
Bottom line, you learn the hard way. I was blessed the first couple of years to have a young man who was a student teaching with me that did my pitching. Then once he was there no longer, finding a pitching coach was the hardest assistant to find that you felt brought quality to it. I've been blessed over the years to have a half a dozen guys that are really good, but I just think as a head coach, you better never let yourself get too far away from those pitchers, because how they perform is going to have an awful lot to do with your success or your failure.
If you were mentoring a pitching coach right now, where would the first place that you would start? Where's the first place you'd start?
One thing I brought back from me from the Army that served me well is keep it simple, stupid. And I think in today's world, there is so much information, and it's great. But we have a tendency, I think, to overload the young people in our exuberance to get everything done as best we can. I think sometimes we overload the young people, feed them the information we're excited about almost too fast. I think like anything else, it's building blocks, and you've got to take it one step at a time. I understand velocity is the buzzword now. I get it, but I'm still a firm believer you got to throw strikes. The game starts with strikes.
And where's that start for you? Because we hear that a lot, and that's there's a lot of different Twitter arguments now, but that's always the velocity, the command piece. But obviously they're both important. But when you're talking command, what are some foundational things you would do with them when they first got to you?
Well, one of the things I've learned over the years is there's a difference between control and command. Control is being able to throw a strike. Command is being able to throw it where you want to throw it in that strike zone. I think it starts first with the control package. I think part of that's emphasis. I think part of that's feedback. I think part of that's simplification. And then from there, I think confidence grows and you build command. I was blessed my first year at Yavapai to work with a young man named Ken Giles, who went on and had a nice career in professional baseball. And he was a 93-mile-an-hour arm, but it was terrifying as to where the ball was going to go. And we finally sat down and just went back to beginning baby group pitching. lift your leg, throw the ball. Forget the slide step, forget the wind up, pitch out the stretch, pitch like you did in Little League. And let's get a fastball in the strike zone. And to his credit, a 19-year-old young man, 20-year-old young man buying into something that radical, I give him all the credit. And it was amazing as he got to where he could throw that fastball for a strike. The velocity went from 93 to 100 that fall, actually. And it wasn't the physical stuff. It was the mental. I can throw this ball for a strike. And from there, the rest is history. But I just think confidence has so much to do with it. Learning how to handle stress. There's so much failure in baseball, learning how to handle failure, both as a hitter and as a pitcher.
Did you slow his tempo down? I mean, again, telling somebody to throw it across the plate and them actually doing it are two different things. But did you slow his tempo down? Did you speed him up? What were some of the things that you helped him with?
Initially, we slowed it down and simplified it. Just lift your leg, break your hands, and let's go. And from there, you put little bits of the pieces back together. And like I said, credit to him, because a lot of young men would have resisted that. And if he did, I never felt that resistance. And I think sitting down and developing a plan together, he and I developed it together, was huge into his buying into that. But I think it was also huge into his success.
I always felt like if you could get, we'd film from home plate, but we'd film from the side too. I always felt like the guys that didn't have great command, it seemed like their glove and their lead knee were far away from each other when they got to that. They don't call it bounce point anymore, but when they got to that point, it just seemed like the guys that threw hard but also threw more strikes, it seemed like their lead knee and their glove were closer together, handbrake.
Agree. And it's amazing, as long as I've been doing this, it's amazing how much the keywords, the teaching points have changed. You don't rip the front side glove anymore. You keep the glove out over your front foot. Little things like that even in today's world, I'm dealing with college guys that are still somewhere along the line being taught to do something different. Maybe 10 years from now, if I'm still alive, it'll be something different we're teaching, but yeah, I think the front side has so much to do. I ask our kids to film when they're away for this break. I want them to film the long toss they do, and I want them to film the pin work, and I want the pin work from straight behind to let me see action on the ball, but I want to see it straight from the belly button so I can see where they're at foot strike, because how you get there is less important, I think, than being there.
With the long toss, what are you looking at?
It's not so much what I'm looking at is me trusting them to do it. I've worked with young men. This is my 53rd year. Somewhere in that area, trust has never developed, and I don't take their word for it. I want to see proof that they're doing it. I'm sure there's a lot of educators out there that are cringing in my statement, but it's reality. I'm looking, obviously, what I want to see is the pull downs. I want to see if they're doing them correctly, because just throwing long is one thing, but throwing it correctly so you don't hurt yourself is something else.
I mean, what are you looking for on their pull downs?
Just that they're getting the crow hop the way they want to do it, or the way we want them to do it, and that they've got distance. Everyone's a little bit different, and every day's a little different on how their arm feels. Alan Yeager with the listen to your arm is probably the cue word I use more than any single thing else, but it's so appropriate. Just
and
looking
that's
for distance.
Traditional crow hop too on the way out, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And I was a big fan of the traditional crow hop too, just on the way out, and then being a little more aggressive with the feet on the way back in when they're compressing.
Correct. I think that the step behind, the running guns, in many occasions have gotten confused with long toss.
Yes.
They're two different things.
Yep.
And one does not supplant the other. But I'm a long toss guy.
Yeah.
So
I am too. I didn't pitch, but it saved my arm my entire career, and luckily it saved our players' arms their career too. Fortunate to not have too many arm injuries, and I think long toss had a lot to do with that component.
I agree 100%. I think it's health. I do think it's a velocity developer, a strength developer, but I think health might be the single most important.
Yeah, arm fitness. I love the term arm fitness. It just makes sense to me.
There's no, yes, we do. We spend probably 40 minutes a day on arm care. And my head coach shakes his head at me sometimes, but
we'd have to start the pitchers early. I was doing the pitching at the end, so we started their practice earlier than the position players' practice just to give them time.
Yes, I was at Yavapai, like I said, like you and I spoke, working for Ryan Kogel, who's now out of Western, and how much time do you need today? And I'd tell him, and he'd adjust the schedule accordingly, and then get it done. But they're a different breed of cat. Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't put a pitching machine out there and play the game. We need a pitcher out there, and keeping him healthy is paramount to our success.
How many of your new pitchers that you get have not really long tossed before?
Well, how many say they've long tossed and how many have long tossed correctly are two different numbers, and I'm not trying to avoid your question.
Yes. It needed clarification.
That most, I would say 75% probably or more have not long tossed, in my mind, of what's correctly. And correctly to me is the Alan Yeager stuff. Yeah. And I think he is the guru with long toss and has done a lot for our profession and gives a lot to coaches that is so beneficial. But most of them. And I find some are resistant to it. I literally at Yavapai one year had to set aside 1 day a week for long toss because they literally would not do it on their own. Even though I provide the time in the day, they wouldn't do it on their own. So we made a long toss day. Our schedule permitted in the fall, and we were able to do that.
And once the light goes on, though, you got them. I mean, once their arm starts feeling better, you got them.
Yes. I was born and raised in Missouri on a farm. Once you hook that fish, you got them. And that's pretty much with the young men. Once they figure it out that, wait, this works. Why? Yeah. But selling them is a different story sometimes.
How did you get from the farm to Missouri State? Well, it's still Southwest Missouri State to me. It will always be because it's still Southwest Missouri State. Shout out to Coach Gutton and Coach Rowe. But
I actually went to. I was born and raised in Central Missouri. Got recruited to go to University of Missouri as a track person, actually. Of a little small school, so we didn't have football. We had baseball, track, and basketball. So I went to SMS, for lack of a better statement, and Coach Rowe was the assistant track coach. And then when baseball started, it started my senior year actually in college, and he was the baseball coach. So I've known him pre-baseball, and then Coach Gutton that I've met on occasion, but went in the service, was overseas in Vietnam for a year, and then I was stationed in Arizona and stayed because it's hard to leave the weather in January and February, especially when you grew up in the Midwest.
Do you have any good Coach Rowe stories?
Not that's probably tellable in this forum.
That's a common theme. I need
to
do some ABCA after hours podcasts for tell the stories that you can't.
Good
tell.
Man treated me well. Yes. I have no negatives. My time at Missouri State was excellent. It's good people I worked with, and good people worked with me.
Did you enlist or did you get drafted into the Army for Vietnam?
I needed the money, so I did ROTC. Yep. My rent was $20 a week, so I got $20 a month. That took care of 1/4 of my rent for the month. Terrible reason, but
I value the military, though. I just, I think I know there's other countries that you have to have some service. I think Israel does that, where you have to have some service. I think it would do the country some good if there was a service component for the college piece.
I 110% agree with you. I am a better person for my time. I know that I was much better student in my graduate work than I was in my undergraduate work, in large part because of the maturity. I firmly believe that every young man and perhaps young woman should have a service component uh, after they turn 18 or graduate from high school. I think it makes the discipline, the direction uh, that you have in your life is just so much more.
And even if it was AmeriCorps or Teach for America or something, just
Something.
fill some service component of giving
Exactly.
back. Just
Exactly.
gives you a much better perspective on your journey.
It does, without a doubt.
So then, how'd you find ASU then?
Well, I was teaching at, okay, I came out of the service and was a police officer, city of Scottsdale, for a year and a half, worked for the city of Scottsdale for 3 years total, and then allowed me to finish my master's degree at ASU, which was the closest. And then went back into teaching and taught 1 year at a middle school. Chaparral opened in the fall of 1972, and I was lucky enough to be on that original staff.
I mean, was coaching always in the back of your mind that was something you wanted to do?
A story, and I remember this as vivid as it was yesterday. After my junior year in college, when my dad and I are sitting and talking, because I've changed majors 2 or 3 times, like a lot of us do. And I was kind of, what do I want to do? Like a lot of us want to do at age 20. Uh, he said, well, started college to be a teacher and a coach. You know, you probably your best avenue to a degree is just to finish and be a teacher and a coach. And then after a couple of years, you figure out what you want to do, or you can go ahead and do it. That's 53 years ago. I guess I haven't figured out what I want to do yet because I'm still coaching.
Did you have much contact with Coach Brock at all at ASU in your time there?
He had a camp that was he did up in Prescott, and I worked at a time or two. Coach Fry, who was his assistant for years, I had more contact with him. And actually, Coach Wing, who was at the University of Arizona, was probably my strongest contact as far as resources to go to. They were just baseball guys, and they would take the time to talk to a young coach that was trying to get better. The only thing he was ever very smart about was he realized he didn't know much, and he could always learn more. So I was blessed to have those, and there were 3 or 4 high school coaches at the time that would put up with my inane questions of how they did this and how they were so successful. So there's always people that guide you in your career, whatever it may be.
Did it take you long to get things going at Chaparral?
Well, I think that again, a cop-out answer. The direction of going is a broad word. We started out with freshmen and sophomores only. So the very first year we were school 72, 73, we were JV only. And I got the program in 70, 73, 74 with no seniors or very few seniors. And we were successful in the fact that we had a winning record. We were successful in the fact that we made the playoffs, but we were 20 years before we won a state championship. So it's degrees of, we won region championships. We got to the state tournament. We had 2 runners up before we ever won it. So I was beginning to wonder if we'd ever win it. But you stay the course, and hopefully things will get better.
You're like John Wooden. Took John Wooden 16 years, I think, before he won his first national championship.
I can't even begin to honor the fact that you use my name in the same sentence.
Why? I don't know. I'm looking through your resume. It looks just as good.
No, I went to, when you're a new school, you coach everything. And I coached basketball for a while, coached football for a while, coached wrestling, coached track. You just do it. And I went to a couple of clinics that were held at UCLA when Bill Walton was there, actually, and listened to Wooten talk and Dean Smith, and to me, the guys that are the godfathers of college basketball. And so I've read the books. Coaching's coaching. It's a different sport, but it's still coaching. And how you develop relationships with your young men, and how those relationships sustain over the years, at least as important as the X's and O's, I think.
I agree. I've been doing this long enough to the podcast, especially. Those are a lot of common themes: is the communication piece and developing relationships, and not just sports. That's life. If you have good communication with those around you, it's probably going to go well.
One of the advantages, as we talked before we started, I moved from Prescott back down to Scottsdale. And one of the advantages that I didn't foresee is having breakfast or lunch or dinner with so many ex-players. They may just be feeling sorry for me, who knows? But it's certainly great to see them and talk to them and be back in touch with them on a more regular basis.
Did you reach out to Alex, or did Alex reach out to you about coming to Scottsdale?
He reached out to me.
Smart man.
I don't know about that. He may regret it on a daily basis.
I highly doubt that.
But I was blessed. I had two or three. Well, I had half a dozen. I had a couple of high school reach out to me and a couple of junior colleges. And the timing, because at one point I was going to Iowa Western with Coach Kogel and was trying to make that work. And the timing, when I finally realized I couldn't do it or make it work, why, by that time they had to go fill their jobs, which was the right thing to do. And then so Alex came in about a week before practice started.
Just look, I mean, Paul Konerko, Ike Davis, Brian Bannister. Did you know those guys were going to be good when they showed up?
I actually had breakfast with Paul right before I came to this podcast.
He's one of my favorite big league players.
He just played the game hard every day and played it right. I'm still in touch with Benny. I'm still in touch with Ike. I never tried to predict more than one level up. I think when you skip a level, it's just, I hear people say, oh, this guy's going to be a big leaguer. This guy.
Oh, man.
That's great.
They don't know how hard it is to make it.
I'm glad you're that clairvoyant. I'm not. I think as a high school coach, I think this guy is going to be at least a really good college player. Who knows after that? Because how do you predict maturity? How do you predict good health? How do you predict injury-free? How do you predict work ethic? How do you predict girls entering their lives, whether we want to admit that or not? So I never said, I never looked and said, Paulie's going to be a big league hitter, 6-time All-Star, and a 16-year major league career. That's beyond my.
Yeah, you can't predict that.
But we had 7 come out of that program while I was there, and I'm very proud of that for one high school program. And Banny's making a career for himself after, and that just, we talked over Christmas, and it's just such a great kid.
That's just as gratifying for me now as seeing what former players are doing in the industry and beyond. That's just as gratifying as what they did as players.
I agree, and even outside the industry, if they're good family men and good parents and good careers, and they don't have to be millionaires, they just have to be quality people, because I think sports plays such an important part, and I think baseball even more because of the failure factor, because you're going to fail in life at some things, and you're going to fail in baseball a lot of things. So learning how to deal with failure and handle failure and pick yourself off the ground after an 0 for 5 has a lot to do with not making that sale or not closing that deal or whatever you're in. Sounds corny to some people, but I believe it.
It's true. Has keeping kids accountable changed over the years?
100%.
What's the difference now for keeping kids accountable? Parents. Yeah.
Parents.
Not much help, is there?
People ask me that question, I give them that answer, and they look at me like, oh, you're trying to be funny. I'm not.
No.
I'm not, because today's parents, and I sound like an old fogey, but I am. Today's parents aren't doing a good enough job, and our society's not doing a good enough job of holding ourselves accountable. So therefore, we don't hold our young people accountable. And when a coach tries to do that, then especially it's a free agent society. well, he's too hard on my kid. I'll go someplace else. You look at the transfer portal in baseball and college right now. In late August, when school was getting ready to start, there was 3,000 plus young men in the transfer portal. And not all of that was accountability. Some of it was COVID issues and things like that. But still, I think it's a reflection on where our society is right now.
I just saw the football numbers. They haven't brought out the baseball numbers yet, so I'm interested to see. But the college football numbers were 40% of kids that went into the portal didn't find a home.
Yeah.
So my dad always said, "Be careful what you wish for."
Exactly.
Because there's a possibility that you may not find a school.
That old country term, I'm a country boy. The grass isn't always as green on the other side of the fence as you think it is.
Yeah.
So.
I love the quote, "The grass is greener where you water it."
Very good. Very good.
What are some of the similarities, though? I mean, I know parenting is probably the biggest difference, but what are some of the similarities between now and then?
The young man with work ethic is going to succeed, and he may not be the most talented. I think Paul is a great example of that. Yeah. I mean, just like I said, 6-time All-Star. He made a comment in the paper when he was in high school, right after he got drafted, and I thought it was so good. He said, "I'm not a good athlete. I'm a good hitter."
Yeah.
And one of the conversations we had during his junior year was, you're not fast, and you never will be fast, but if you can just get yourself to average. So it's not on that Scouts grading scale. So it's not a black mark against you. If you can just be average in everything else, and you excel in 2 or 3 things. People forget how good his arm strength was. He was a catcher in high school, and a very good one. But the bat's what got him drafted. So, but he worked on the things that weren't fun to work at. I mean, it's fun to hit when you're a hitter, but it's not fun to block balls in the dirt at 90 miles an hour. And he was a good catcher, but still he worked on his speed and got himself to average. And he was 5'4" when he was a sophomore in high school playing second base. The umpire asked me, we're playing an extra inning game. It's starting to get dark. And the umpire asked me, says, "Does his mother know that he's out here with you this late at night?" Because he looked like he was a 4th grader. But he played every day because he was good. He played the best.
What did he do specifically to work on his speed?
Paul?
Yeah.
Weight training was a big thing, and at that time the bands, when you pull the other person, the parachute behind the guy, he went to a speed trainer here in town. There was a track guy. I can't remember his name right now because he was an Olympian. But anyway, he when he could have been to a baseball facility hitting, he went to the track guy and worked on getting his speed up to average.
Love it.
And that give his parents. He had great parents, a great older brother. I remember I'm in my office getting ready to go out to the field, and I get a phone call from Paul's dad, and he's a 6th grader. And he called and introduced himself. And he said, "Well, we're moving to Scottsdale, and I wanted to ask you a couple of questions." I said, "Fine." Said, "I got an older son that's going to be a senior, and I've got a 6th grade son that I think is going to be pretty good." Well, every parent tells you that, so you don't put a lot of faith in it. Said, "My older son is going to be a senior, and I just wanted to know if he's a second baseman or a third baseman. I just want to know if you've got any second baseman or third baseman whose last name's Dawson." And I said, "No, I don't have Dawson."
Smart.
We'll take our chances competing against anybody else, but we don't want to compete against a coach's child. And that's the perfect dad. Just give me a chance, and I'll prove myself. And Peter played well for us, and went on and played actually at Scottsdale Community College.
Yeah, my dad at youth camp, he would bring the parents up before youth camp. He's like, "Hey, if you're coaching the team, your kid can pitch and play shortstop and do whatever you want. But if you're not coaching the team, then you got to trust what the coach is doing."
Yes.
Did your calendar change much over the years, like how you structured things, or did it stay pretty consistent with how you structured things for your team,
Team wise or pitching wise?
team wise?
Team wise, when we first started out in '74, we were allowed a spring season and a summer season. There was no fall ball, there was no winter leagues, there was no school organized facility things at all. So you were very limited in what you could do. As the years went on, then you were able to do a fall league, a fall practice, winter practice, that type of thing. So obviously, as the rules relaxed a little bit, we did more and more. But anything we did in the fall or winter had to be 100% open to anybody in our school. Um, and I always worked the summer. I always worked the youngest summer team myself, which was our past freshman class, because I wanted time with them, because I thought tryouts are wonderful, but I want to see what they do long term. I want to see how they carry themselves when the team's going well, when they're going well, and even more so how they carry themselves when they're going poorly. So
I give a habit forming talk. It's peak performance habit forming, but that is in there. It's called the fresh start effect. When somebody's environment gets thrown off, they can make habit changes quicker. So I always tell college and high school coaches that, like, try to get with your freshmen if you can, because you're going to be able to help them. You're going to instill some better habits in them quicker. If you leave them alone, they could get in some bad habits as well.
agree. And I wanted them to I wanted them to do the things we wanted them to do, whether they were 100% right or 100% wrong. I wanted them to do it our way, because that would make their transition to varsity easier, I thought.
Yep. What about the pitching calendar? What do you feel like's changed?
There's so much more knowledge about how to condition and when to condition. Uh, Obviously, when I was playing, you played catch to warm up. Now, if you take Alan Yeager's, I really don't have any stock in Alan Yeager's program or anything like that. I'm making no money by this at all. But he's got that year-round program, and you don't buy into, or at least I don't buy into anybody's total program, but you pick and choose what fits your facilities, what fits your contact with the young people. I always have a 5-week throwing program out for our pitchers, whether they're coming off of the summer or whether they're going into the spring. We shut down from the 1st of November until last week, actually, with our pitchers, and now they're starting to ramp back up, because you can't just pick up a ball and be in good condition. And there's a lot of great surgeons in the world. We're blessed to have some here in Arizona, but you're never quite as good after surgery as you were before. So it's my job to try to help them, I think, stay out of the doctor's office.
Well, what are some of the other things you've picked up along the way from some of the other companies out there?
In what regard?
Just training devices.
I'm a big Tom House fan. I'm a big Lance Wheeler fan. The ranch, Walford down in Houston, Eric Cressy. I tell kids all the time. I told the kids at Scottsdale our first day there, I said, guys, I'm not a very good coach, but I'm a pretty good thief. And I'll pick and choose and steal things from other guys that are a lot smarter than me, and try to put them into what we're doing based on what facilities we have, what equipment we have, what talent you have, what I can teach. One of the things I had to learn as a young coach, I was a big Gary Ward fan.
Me too.
Gary Ward at Yavapai College started the program at Yavapai College the first year. We started the program at Chaparral High School. And we had graduate classes at ASU together by accident. And sooner or later, you're going to wind up talking baseball and talking coaching. And he had the linear flow hitting, which works so well for so many guys. And he tried to explain that to me, and I'd get so excited and so juiced about it. And I'd go to a clinic as a young coach and see all this really good stuff. And then it finally dawned on me, there's a couple of things you got to figure out. Number one, if you teach it, can you fix it when it breaks? Because in a baseball season, it's going to break somewhere along the line. And number two, are your athletes capable of handling the same thing that an Oklahoma State athlete is capable of handling. And so then my notes got a little smaller. And can I take this back home and make it work? And can I fix it if it breaks? So I was even a good thief as a young coach. I just had to learn what to steal and what not to steal, I think.
Gary Ward's name came up last week, and I spoke at the Garden State Clinic, but we were talking about the interlocking sequences of parts, which is the hitting video we would watch every year in high school. So his name came back up again. So
sequential unlocking of body parts to maximize bat speeds before the contact.
He was so far ahead of his time.
He was. I go to a clinic out in LA, and he's speaking, and there's two gentlemen in front of me sitting there, and he starts out with that, and they said, I don't understand this. I'm leaving.
Oh, they should have
I'm
stayed.
not leaving. I'm getting a dictionary out.
Should have
and figure
stayed.
out what the man's saying, because he's over and above the rest of us. So.
Well, if you could sift through some of the scientific pieces, a lot of it made sense, like connection of the barrel to your body somewhere, like all the things that your shorter levers with your knees and your elbows. Like if you could get through some of the scientific jargon, it made sense what he was talking about.
Well, and the touch points that he used.
Yes.
I use those.
And we miss that a lot now. You don't see as much of it with hitters. That was one of the first places I would start with hitters in routines, in box routines, is touch the barrel somewhere to your body so you know it's in the same spot every time.
Yes, and they were usable things.
Yes.
And he was always so good because I could call him and get a layman's explanation.
Yeah.
I've talked to him within the last 2 or 3 months. He's one of my heroes. I've got a lot of heroes, but he's right.
Tell him I had almost 300 hits in college because of him from watching that video for 4 years in high school.
That's a good enough reason. Good man. Great coach, but an even better man.
What made a good assistant for you?
I coached at Chaparral for 37 years. One of my assistants named Mark Miller was with me 35 of those 37. That's unbelievable. That's just unbelievable. I had another assistant that was with me 25 on the JV and freshman level, which is unbelievable. I had multiple guys that was with me 20 plus. So longevity was one. Being willing to buy into what we were trying to do. Not rote buy-in. I'm fine to be questioned. I want to be questioned. I don't want yes men around me. I want people to challenge me at the right time, at the right place. And so commitment to the program, commitment to the kids, willingness to treat the kids right, willingness to go to a conference and grow, to read. Back then, there was no online stuff, but you could find videos and pass them around. But it was very comforting as a head coach to be able to realize that whatever was being taught at the freshman level and the JV level was not wrong, because there's a lot of wrong running around out there, especially then. It didn't have to be 100% right, it just couldn't be wrong, and that they treated the kids right. Because if I lost them as a freshman, I'd never see them as a senior. And so those were the big things. Hopefully, like I said, I was blessed with a lot of guys that stayed with us. Blessed with guys that were on campus that stayed with us, as well as off-campus gentlemen. That's getting harder and harder to find in today's society. But those were my biggies.
Do you have any of those old resources still that you go back to?
Oh, yes.
Which ones? I think somebody could make a lot if you could find a way to get VHS tapes and convert those to MP4. So I'm sure there's a way to do it.
I've got a videotape from a guy named Ron DeVinny on catching, who was my assistant coach for 5 years, actually, and was the head coach at Corona del Sol. He's a Hall of Fame member, and he's a guru at catching. I've got some stuff from Ward, probably the same ones you were watching. I'm to the point now where finding a VHS player is,
yes. I
should have them converted, but I haven't done it. I realize I'm at the twilight. People ask me, why are you still doing this? I still enjoy it. I enjoy going to the ballpark. I enjoy being around young men. This is going to sound conceited. I don't mean it to be. I still think I have something I can give them, and that's when I can't, then I'll stop. But it's good for me mentally and it's good for me physically.
Yeah, it keeps you young.
Mentally young in today world, it's yeah, just
Hey, YouTube, you
just
might be able to find YouTube. Gary Ward's on there. The interlocking sequence of parts is on YouTube. One of them, not the whole thing, but
right.
a little bit and snippet of it is on YouTube right now.
And a pitching guy was a guy named Dave Dangler, who was head coach at Yavapai for years and went up to Washington, went to Portland State or Portland, University of Portland. He's now a scout with Detroit, and he's one of the best pitching guys I've ever been around. And I think he was pitching coach at Notre Dame for a little while, so he's been around some places. We had some. He ran a camp up at Yavapai that I did every year. We had some. I wanted my kids to go there to learn from him, but I went there to learn from him because and guys like Eric, his poor wife. We'll talk baseball in a clinic. We'll talk baseball in a parking lot. We'll talk baseball over lunch. When they'll come walking down the hallway at the BCA and see me coming the other way, and I think she probably just rolls her eyes and goes, "How long are they going to stand in this hallway and talk this time?" Yeah. But she's awesome. She makes the best chocolate chip cookies too. Anyway, lest I digress. But just coaches, young coaches don't. My biggest complaint about the really young coaches is they don't want to talk baseball today. When I grew up as a coach, I had a guy named Roy Coppinger and a guy named Bob Everett, and a guy named Hal Eustace, and a guy named Charlie Webb that were established high school coaches in Arizona. And every time we played them, they'd give me a lesson in coaching, but they'd always sit and talk to me about how they did things. And you can't copy somebody else, but you can learn from somebody else. So
yeah, I say it a lot. It's like a chef. A chef can give you all the ingredients in the world, but you're not going to make the same food as a chef. So it's open to share. I think I think the younger group we got coming up though, Coach Dawson, I think that is starting to change. I think you're seeing a lot more sharing of information, people reaching out. I think we're starting to bring that back with the younger generation of guys. We have a really good group of young coaches out there right now.
I think the ABCA does more to promote that than any other organization I'm aware of, and in baseball or any other sport. I think baseball coaches share more than other sport coaches do. We don't have that flex offense or whatever people want to do in football or basketball or whatever. But you can either teach it or you can't, and your kids can either do it or they can't. I think the willingness to share and the ABCA's promotion of that willingness is great for our profession.
How did you know it was time to go to the college side?
I didn't. My wife wanted cooler weather. So we had bought a house in Prescott, which is 15 degrees cooler. And she had actually moved up in 2005, and I'd actually commuted on weekends. And I kept promising her this would be my last year and be my last year. And so finally she called me on it. It wasn't that I knew it was time to go to the college side. It was just, I had done USA baseball with the old head coach at Yavapai named Sky Smeltzer. And he knew we had a house up there. So every spring he'd call me and say, you ready to move yet? You ready to move yet? And finally it was time to move. I would have been fine staying at Chaparral.
Any hesitation?
Oh, every day. Every day. Biggest thing was learning to be an assistant coach.
Yeah.
And that sounds, I had never been an assistant coach when I got the job at Chaparral. I was later on assistant coach at USA and the Sun Belt teams and things like that, but those are just 2-week-long things. So learning how to be an assistant coach. And if you talk to Ryan, he probably would tell you that I still don't know how to be an assistant coach because I have too many opinions that he oftentimes didn't want to hear. And I think Alex would tell you the same thing, but I try to be the assistant coach I wanted. I won't be a yes man.
Do you feel like that helped you grow as a coach?
Being an assistant or not being an assistant?
Being an assistant.
I wish I'd have been an assistant before I'd have been a head coach. I think I'd have been a better head coach sooner.
Why do you say that in relation to relating to your assistants?
Yes, I would like to think, and maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but I'd like to think one of the reasons that we were able to retain assistants as well as we did over the years is we treated them right and let them know they were valued. And I watch so much turnover in staff today, and I think back to relationships. You got to have relationships with the young people, but you got to have buy-in from your assistants too. And whether it's them helping you on the weekends in the fall ball, or them helping you in the summer, or just letting them know that they're important. And I think the freshman coach is second most important person in the high school program, because if you lose them as freshmen, you'll never see them again.
Is there anything in the game you haven't done that you wanted to do?
That list is probably too long to mention.
What?
I would have liked to have won a lot more games. And
Oh, come on now. You
different
can't
levels,
say
all those
that.
kind of things.
There's a lot of guys out there that would trade with you right now.
I'm blessed.
Looking at your resume and looking at, I would trade with you right now, looking at my resume compared to yours.
I was blessed. I worked in a good community. We worked hard. I had guys around me that worked hard. I had young men it was a white collar community, and we tried to sell them that we were going to play blue collar baseball. We had 6-hour practices on Saturday. And in Arizona, that can get a little hot. We played all summer in the heat. The day it was 122, we played at Phoenix Christian. And that's the state record for hottest day on the record. We played. And today you couldn't have, but that was many years ago. But selling blue collar was hard, but we always felt like if we had enough invested as players, when it came time to win or lose in the 6th and 7th, it was harder to give it away if you got a lot invested in it. I think that's life too.
Well, growing up in the Midwest, you didn't know any better. You're
Yes.
going to be blue collar if you grow up in the Midwest.
Grew up on a small farm. My high school graduating class was 40 people. And that's the only thing you knew. You got up in the morning and took care of the animals and went to bed right after you took care of it. There was no daylight savings time. It was when the sun came up and the sun goes down.
And then how did you get involved with USA Baseball? Who nudged you to get into USA Baseball?
Blind luck, I think, honestly.
Kind of got East Campus and West Campus. So you got the West Coast campus and then the East Coast campus now for USA Baseball.
I give a lot of credit to, my personal physician is an ex-student, and he was the team physician for USA Baseball, has been for years. And I think he put a plug in for me, and a local orthopod that I really trusted with our kids over the years. The team physician was Dr. Dickey. The orthopod was Angelo Madalino, and they both did the Olympic team and stuff like that. And I think they probably put a plug in for me. And then in whatever year we went to Taiwan, it was 03, 04, 05, 04, I think. Mark Johnson was the head coach, and he requested me. We had played Mark's teams over the years a few times, so I think Mark helped me a lot getting in. I had done the trials back in Joplin, and it was great for me because I'm being a Missouri boy. And so I had worked with USA Baseball, but to finally get an opportunity to coach at that level was exciting.
Any future big leaguers on those teams?
I think there was 8 or 9 on the first team and 6 or 7 on the second. A couple of names you might recognize is Buster Posey and Kershaw and Betances and Justin Upton and McCutcheon. McCutcheon was one of my favorites. He really was.
He played right, played hard.
He had such a great smile, and he had such a great sense of humor. And I was coaching pitchers, so I was never around him except on the bus. But he was just a fun kid that played hard, and he still does. And he never played for my St. Louis Cardinals. He always a thorn in their side, but I've always managed to stay an Andrew McCutcheon fan.
Yep.
As with Posey and as with Kershaw, as with all of them, because they were just amazing kids. The first group we traveled all the way to Taiwan with, and you're with them that long. And in the second group, we went to Mexico with, but we had legitimate time to spend with them because we got them together in Atlanta for about 2 weeks before we went. So we had 15, 16 games under our belt. Posey was the one I'd have put in my travel bag and taken home if I could have. He was just such a quality guy.
How are you keeping everybody around? I know everybody likes to bag on the phone, but it's way easier to get a hold of people now than back then.
I try to text at important days, holidays, baseball, Facebook. People can't believe I'm on Facebook because I'm too old for that.
No, you're not.
But it lets me stay in touch with former players, and if you got time for a great story, this is in the Chicago paper, so it's one of the Tribune, the big one, I think, and it's one of the writers that if I could remember his name, you would recognize it, but he's interviewing Paul when Paul got his 2000 hit that was in LA against the Angels. And he says, we're up in the hotel room afterwards. And as always, he's always so accommodating and always shares his time. And he said, during our time there, which is close to an hour, he said he got multiple phone calls or phone messages, and he'd glance at the phone and lay it down. Said about halfway through, he gets one and says, excuse me just a minute, and answers the text and laughs and puts it down on the bed. He said, we finished the interview, and after it's over, said, can I ask you a question off the record? I said, sure. I said, of all the calls you got, you answered one. What was different about it? He said, well, that was my high school coach.
Yeah.
He said, okay, y'all stay in touch? He said, yeah, pretty good. He said, well, what was so funny? He said, I didn't know he could text. They don't give me much credit for having any technological abilities at all, which is probably smart on their part.
Yeah, that was my dad when he was first getting into everything. I set his Facebook account up for him, so apologies for anybody that has to deal with my dad on social media. I kind of got the ball rolling with that, and then he kind of found Twitter on his own. So
one of our young assistants up at Yavapai is the head coach of Brophy now, Josh Garcia. We're getting rained out of practice, and we're sitting in the office, and he's bored. So all of a sudden, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm on a lot of places I don't want to be, but I'm there, and I wasn't smart enough to get off, so I'm still there.
Yep. Heck yeah. Do you have a fail-forward moment, something that you thought was going to sidetrack you, but looking back now, one of the best things that happened to you?
Not really. There was a lot of doubt. You go 20 years without winning a state championship. You get close. We won, I think we had either 2 or 3 runners up before we won the first one. And you have some self-doubt. I think self-doubt, if anything. And we always tried to hang our hat on player development. And we were there to help the kids get better, help the kids get to a college that they wanted to go, to hopefully help them be better citizens and better people. And hopefully the winning would happen. And we won enough. We just didn't win the big one, if you know what I mean, if that's the big one. And then
how do you stay away from that trap, though? I think as all coaches, we go through that, where if you ultimately don't win the last game of the year, you feel like it's not it's a failure, but I think as competitors, I think we all went through that at times, that it wasn't a successful season. How did you stay away from that trap?
I think I looked at the first 2 runner-ups, and if you'd have told me before the season was over, before the season began, that we were going to have this record and be runner-up in the state, I'd have said, book it, I'll take it, let's go. But when you get there, it's not enough. And I think perspective, I think you got to be able to back away and just look at it and your priorities, back to player development. I kept coming back to player development. If I felt we got better as a team, I felt like individuals got better. If I felt like we had good citizens on that team, and that was a requirement, we kicked very few young men off, maybe 2 in 37 years for behavior issues, because they knew coming in what was going to be expected. And one of my JV coaches was the head of security on campus. So I was the AD. So the chance of something happened on that campus and one of us not finding out about it was pretty slim. And the principal and assistant principal was really good. If a baseball player got in trouble, they were much more scared of me and what I would do to them than what the administration would do to them. And just perspective, and it's hard to keep. It's hard to keep in life. Let's be honest.
Did you have a player contract for them that they had to sign?
Yes.
What was in there?
Everything from behavior. I had a parent contract they had to sign. Believe it or not, I had a code of conduct for the parents, and
I just sent my parent letter out. The episode that I had a couple weeks ago, I referenced the parents' letter that I would send out for their guidelines. So I've sent that out a lot here lately.
I had a dress code. I had the rules. I was Bobby Winkles was coaching at Arizona State when I first got here. So some way, somehow, and I don't remember how, I got a copy of his. And a lot of it was borderline plagiarized from his stuff and made applicable to high school players. But I felt like that was a pretty good place to model it after.
We talked standards more than rules. I didn't like using the word rules. I just felt like it threw kids off when we started talking rules. So we did talk more. These are our standards.
I used expectations.
Yep.
But same thing, just semantics.
And then let them decide on some accountability things. So, like, if somebody's late, what are we going to do? If somebody does this, what are we going to do? And let them decide. And then it was way easier to have that conversation with, like, hey, I didn't make these. You guys did. So we're going to try to keep people accountable to what you guys set for us as a team.
I think that's much more important with today's athlete.
Yes, the Gen Zs.
Athlete of 40 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yes.
Without a doubt. If you can convince young people it's their idea.
Yes.
If you can convince young people that they had input, as an assistant coach, one of the things I've had to learn, if I can convince my head coach it was his idea, there's a really good chance it'll happen.
Yes. Yep.
But
any of us that have had bosses, that's the best way to get something implemented is to make it seem like it's their idea.
If they have input, like you just said, it's so much harder for them to deny, and buy-in. Show me a team at any level that's extremely successful, and somewhere in the conversation, we had a great clubhouse will come out. Yeah. Well, a great clubhouse is a group of guys that police themselves. Yeah. And leadership's getting harder and harder to find. Yes. Because nobody wants to be a leader because it's too much work and there's too much criticism. Look at politics right now, for example. I mean, who would want to be president of the United States because you're just sitting up there as a part of a shooting gallery because nothing you do is going to please half the country. Well, that same thing, getting young people because of peer pressure to take that leadership role. When you can find that young man, he's a treasure. But
we've done a poor job of teaching people how to handle conflict.
Exactly.
And viewing that as another life learning opportunity with conflict and learning how to handle conflict right and grow from it and move on, we've got to try to find a way to train the next generation how to actually deal with conflict.
Everything's too combative.
Yes, for sure.
If I don't agree with you, then you're wrong and I hate you. And that's not true. Tom Succo and I worked together at Yavapai for 5 years. He was head coach at Brophy for 40 plus years. He's a friend. Our politics are probably diametrically opposite of each other. And we argue about everything. Yep. But we're still friends. Yep. It's okay. It's okay to argue because once in a while, there's a point to be made on the other side. And once in a while, okay, I hate to admit it, but you might be right. But it's okay.
And it's okay to agree to disagree. We can agree to disagree on many things. 99% of the things out there we can agree to disagree on.
It doesn't change how I feel about you as a person.
Yes.
If I respect you, respect, that might be the good word. Yep. I think we're losing that from our society. Yep. And it's sad. Yep. I'm an old fogey, but it's true.
No, you're not. You're not. What about routine? I mean, you're in good shape, man. I love it. I love talking to our legends because they're all in good shape and cognitively and physically. Do you have any tips for trying to keep yourself in shape?
I work with kids every day.
Yeah.
Physically, if my cardiologist asked me the same thing, what do you do exercise with? I said, coach baseball.
Yeah.
And he laughs and he says, well, he's a baseball fan, which helps. And he says, well, at least you're up and you're moving around. And going to the ballpark makes me get up. I have 2 dogs that make me get up sometimes when I don't want to. But I think the mental side more than anything else, I'm not very smart, don't claim to be. The weekend before I shipped out for Vietnam, my dad and I are playing catch in the backyard. That's what we did because it was a farm. You very seldom got 18 kids together to play a baseball game. You found ways to play. But we were playing catch. He sold the farm. He'd worked his whole life. He sold the farm while I was overseas. He moved to a small town. He retired and basically sat down. And by the time I got home, 12 plus months later, he could hardly get out of his chair from rheumatoid arthritis.
Yep.
And obviously I'm going to die. We're all terminal. But I'm
trying to hold it off as long as I can, though.
I'm going to be on the move. My wife, I mow the field on Sunday, and she'd walk the dog. We had a condo 2 blocks away, and she'd walk the dog every so often. And I'd see her around in the corner walking the dog. And when I get home, why, everything all right? I saw you walking Rex. He said, yeah, I had a premonition that you died on the field. And I said, well, the mower has a safety switch. If I fall off of it, it won't run over me. There's worse places to die.
Yes.
There really is. And cognitively, the mental side is how to express yourself and how to have a conversation with a 20-year-old because they keep you sharp because they'll destroy you if you aren't sharp. And I'm not as sharp as I used to be, but I can still banter with them. And I think doing that as long as I can and somebody will have me around is good for me physically and mentally.
Yeah, Ikigai is a really good book. It's a Japanese term for what gets you out of bed in the morning, but that's the people that live the longest find a calling and stay with that calling until they pass. Like that's the key to living a long and healthy and productive life is finding something that you love to do and keep doing it.
Right. People say, well, why don't you retire? Well, I am retired. Being a head coach is work. Being an assistant coach is retirement in comparison. And I don't come home and obsess all night unless the pictures really stink that day.
Yeah.
Where if you're the head coach, you'll find something to obsess over whether you want to or not.
Yeah, there's always fires to be put out as a head coach.
Yeah, lucky me. Yes.
What are you looking forward to this year, the ABCA convention? Obviously, congrats. You're going in, and long time coming for you, but congrats.
Well, I'm flattered. I'm honored. As a young coach, you sit in the back of that room when you go to that first Hall of Fame thing, and you look up there, guys. If you know personally, you're lucky. If you know only from reputation, you're in awe, and you think, oh, wow, that would be the epitome to be up there. I can remember the first one I went to, and that would be such a thing, but that'll never happen to a little high school coach. And so for it to happen, it's just, when Director Kylitz called me, I got goosebumps. I'm sitting in a parking garage. My wife is at an appointment because she wasn't doing well. And I'm sitting in a parking garage and he calls and I don't recognize the number. And with so many spam phone calls anymore, you're almost hesitant to answer. I pick it up and he starts talking. I get goosebumps. It's my biggest fear is I will bawl like a baby when I'm trying to talk for 5 minutes because it's emotional. If it matters to you, it's emotional. And as most coaches are emotional, I think. So.
Well, you've spent that much time doing that one thing that is your true calling. You're going to get emotional up there, and you look out over those faces, like you're going to get emotional.
Yeah, and that
and it means you care.
It does. That last year has been tough. I've lost my wife and had to move and made some life decisions. Like I said, I'd love to have gone to Iowa with Ryan, but a lot have gone on. But I've got to find a way to keep that out of my mind while I'm up there. Thankfully, it's only 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's probably the only benefit of it being that short.
Keep it short.
Is
Yep.
You don't have a lot of time to get into trouble up there.
That's good. I can get in trouble pretty quick, though. I've always had
I get
that capability.
because you only have 3 to 5 minutes. Is there anybody else out there that you like to thank that maybe you're not going to be able to get to?
One of the things that they did this year was let us. They're going to have a program, and we're allowed to.
Yeah,
put
that's
in,
George Horton. Shout out to George Horton. That was his switch.
That's a good move.
It is.
Because I was able to put people in there that I probably wouldn't have time otherwise. My theory is to focus on the people that are physically there.
Yep.
And there's a lot of other people that had so much to do, and you don't know in some cases whether they're going to be there or not. So I was able to put some names down, and even then, I'm sure I forgot some, and that's my fault. But hopefully, I included them all in the program. But
what are some final thoughts or something I should have asked you that I didn't?
You're very thorough.
I'm sure I missed something, didn't I?
I don't know. Well, you got me talking on my stories. Hopefully you'll edit this and get all my stories.
No. I love the stories. I love it. That's what I grew up with, and so I love when people tell their stories because there's so many common themes and common bonds when people start to tell their stories.
Well, there's so many experiences. You don't do it this long. Anytime you're dealing with kids, okay, and college kids aren't kids; they're young adults, but they're still kids. They're just 13th and 14th graders. Let's be honest. I tell them that all the day, every day, and they get mad at me, but that's okay. They're big time college students, but they really aren't.
I have a really good video with Nick Castellanos that I show that's in that presentation about him. When he got traded to the Cubs, he told Joe Madden every day, "Happy opening day." So the interview is him at the Cubs caravan, and he's getting emotional talking about Joe Madden, talking about him, which is a great piece. That's why I always show it, because I think it shows people that you can reconnect every day. I know you're going to get used to things, or things, life hands you some bad things, but you can still reconnect every day and have that youthful energy every day, even when things are really hard.
People ask me, when you going to stop? When I don't get excited for a game, when I don't look forward to going to the park. And when will that be? I don't know, but I'll know.
Hopefully never.
Well, I could. If I down that field, I down that field. They just roll me off the side and continue the game.
Yeah. Coach Dawson, I appreciate your time, man. This meant a lot, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Nashville.
Well, I thank you very much for including me, and you do a great job with these. And
appreciate it. Tell Alex I said hello. That's another reason for me to root for Scottsdale.
Well, I hope we show up.
Yeah, I do too. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.